So many of us today wake up with a strange heaviness in our chest. We look at our world, our work, our relationships, and quietly wonder, is any of this fair? Am I doing the right thing? Do people even care about justice anymore? You feel it when you see corruption being rewarded, when loud voices drown out reasonable ones, when power seems to shape truth more than truth shapes power. And deep inside, there is a tension, a frustration with society, and a confusion about what it really means to live a good life. Almost everyone struggles with this in some form. We question authority. We question morality. We doubt our own choices. And in moments when the world feels chaotic, we crave a clear picture of what a just life looks like and what a just society could become. The Republic is the book that confronts these struggles head-on. It doesn't give simplistic answers. It gives a philosophical structure, a way to understand justice, truth, morality, and purpose in the deepest possible way. It shows why so many of our conflicts, frustrations, and societal failures come from an unclear understanding of justice itself. And it takes you step by step from confusion toward clarity. Welcome to Top Summary, where you learn from the greatest thinkers, transform your life, and see your growth unfold. If you're new here, we bring you inspiring book summaries and practical lessons to help you grow faster and live better. Plato's Republic is not just a philosophy text, it's one of the foundations of Western thought. Written as a dialogue led by Socrates, it explores what justice truly means, not only in society, but in the soul of each individual. Plato wants to answer a single question: why be just? Why should anyone choose morality when immorality often seems to offer faster rewards? This question is more relevant today than ever. In a world filled with misinformation, polarized opinions, and social pressure, we need a framework that helps us see clearly. One that helps us distinguish between appearance and reality, between the loudest voices and the wisest ones. Plato's work matters because it forces us to examine our beliefs, our biases, and the systems around us. The book opens with Socrates visiting the home of Cephalus, an elderly, wealthy man enjoying a peaceful end to his life. Socrates begins with a simple question: what is justice? Cephalus, shaped by a lifetime of honest living, says justice is telling the truth and repaying your debts. It sounds reasonable, but Socrates pushes deeper. He asks, what if returning a weapon to a friend who has gone insane would cause harm? Would that still be justice? The question is gentle but sharp. It shows the limitation of simple definitions. Cephalus steps aside, and his son Polemarchus takes over. He offers another idea. Justice means helping your friends and harming your enemies. Again, it sounds intuitive. In daily life, we often think this way: support those close to us, oppose those who mean us harm. But Socrates questions this too. If justice harms, then it cannot be a virtue, because virtues improve what they touch. And are we always sure who our true friends and true enemies are? It's a recognition that our judgments are often mistaken. Then enters Thrasymachus, fiery, bold, and fed up with these soft definitions. He declares that justice is nothing but the advantage of the stronger. Whoever holds power defines what is just. This feels painfully familiar in our world, where laws, media narratives, and social norms often reflect the interests of those in control. Thrasymachus argues that injustice is actually better, more profitable, and more realistic for anyone clever enough to seize opportunity. This is the moment where the tension rises. Socrates and Thrasymachus clash. Power versus truth. Pragmatism versus morality. Socrates refuses to accept a world where justice is just an illusion created by the powerful. He argues that rulers can make mistakes, and when they do, those laws do not serve their own advantage. He also says that every craft has an aim. Medicine aims at health, navigation aims at safe travel, And rulership, if it is a true craft, must aim at the well-being of the ruled, not the rulers. This early debate is the beginning of a deeper journey. It reveals something essential. Most people think about justice in shallow ways. They confuse justice with power, convenience, tradition, or loyalty. But Plato wants more. He wants a definition so pure and clear that it applies to every soul and every society. The challenge becomes even more intense when Glaucon, a passionate seeker of truth, steps forward. He is not satisfied with Socrates' explanations. Glaucon wants to push the argument to its breaking point. He asks Socrates to prove something extraordinary, that justice is good in itself, not just for its rewards. Glaucon argues that most people choose justice only because they fear punishment. He brings up the famous story of Gyges' ring, a ring that makes its wearer invisible. If a just person had the power to commit any crime without consequences, would they still behave morally? Or would they act like the unjust person once freed from accountability? Glaucon believes that without consequences, even good people might choose selfishness. This challenge hits deep. It echoes modern struggles with anonymity online, corruption behind closed doors, or moral choices when no one is watching. The question becomes painfully personal. Who are you when no one sees you? Socrates accepts Glaucon's challenge. But he says the question is complex, too complex to answer by looking only at individual behavior. Instead, he proposes something remarkable. To understand justice in the soul, first look at justice in a city. The city is like a bigger version of the soul, and by studying its structure, we can understand ourselves. So Socrates begins building an ideal city, not as a real political plan, but as a philosophical model. He starts with basic needs: food, shelter, clothing. A simple city emerges where each person does the work they are best suited for. But Glaucon is not satisfied. He wants a luxurious city, one with desires, competition, and culture. And this leads to conflict, interference, greed, and war. To protect the city, Socrates introduces the guardian class, citizens trained from childhood to embody courage, discipline, and loyalty. These guardians must be intelligent, emotionally balanced, and free from corruption. They must love their city more than wealth or power. To support them, Socrates proposes a radical idea. Guardians must not own private property or accumulate wealth. Because once a ruler begins to chase luxury, justice collapses. This may sound harsh, but it reflects a universal truth. The more power and wealth become personal goals, the more society drifts from fairness. To develop these guardians, Socrates emphasizes the importance of education, not just information, but shaping the soul. Music must nurture harmony and character. Physical training must build strength without creating brutality. Stories must encourage virtue, not fear or selfishness. Art must elevate the soul, not stir chaotic emotions. This is one of Plato's most controversial ideas: strict control over cultural content. But his intention is philosophical, not authoritarian. He believes what we consume shapes who we become. In modern times, we see echoes of this everywhere: how news, entertainment, and social media influence character, values, and emotions. As the city becomes more refined, Socrates introduces another class: the auxiliaries, those who support the guardians, and the producers, who handle crafts, trades, and economic life. Each group serves a function. Each has a role. And justice, Socrates says, is each part performing its proper task without interfering with others. This becomes one of Plato's central principles. Justice is harmony, the right order of things. And just like a city has parts, so does the soul. The rational part seeks truth and wisdom. The spirited part seeks honor, courage, and recognition. The appetitive part desires pleasure, wealth, and physical satisfaction. In most people, these paths are in conflict. The appetites pull one way, pride pulls another, and reason struggles to guide them. This internal division is the source of emotional turmoil in daily life: indecision, guilt, impulsiveness, and regret. Socrates explains that a just soul is one where reason leads, spirit supports, and appetite follows. When your desires are guided by wisdom rather than impulse, your life becomes harmonious. You make decisions more clearly. You feel less conflict within yourself. You face challenges with stability and purpose. This is Plato's most profound insight. The structure of a just city mirrors the structure of a just soul. Justice is not simply doing good things. It is living in a way where every part of your being cooperates under the guidance of reason. And just as injustice in society comes from disorder, so does injustice in the soul. When desires take over, when anger overrides reason, or when fear suppresses courage. As the first part of this journey closes, the city is now shaped, the soul is now mapped, and the definition of justice is beginning to emerge, not as a rule, but as a state of inner order. And in the next part, Socrates will climb toward the highest ideas: the nature of reality, the famous allegory of the cave, the philosopher king, and the essential meaning of truth. For now, take a breath and reflect on the journey so far, from simple definitions of justice to the architecture of a just soul. Socrates has now built the foundation of the ideal city and connected it to the structure of the human soul. But Glaucon and Adeimantus are not finished. They want something even deeper. They want Socrates to prove why justice is the highest good, and why the just life is superior to the unjust one in every way. To do this, Socrates must climb upward, from the visible world to the invisible, from ordinary opinions to true knowledge. And this is where Plato begins to reveal some of the most influential ideas in the history of philosophy. Socrates tells Glaucon that everything they've built so far is incomplete without understanding the highest object of knowledge, what he calls the good. In the same way that light allows the eye to see, the good allows the mind to understand. Without it, even the most intelligent person remains in the dark, unable to grasp truth fully. But with it, clarity emerges, the clarity needed for justice, for moral choice, and for wisdom. To illustrate this, Socrates introduces three analogies. The first is the Sunday. Just as the sun illuminates everything in the visible world, the good illuminates all knowledge. Without the sun, vision is impossible. Without the good, understanding is impossible. This analogy is simple, but it carries profound meaning. Truth is not just about facts. It requires illumination, a kind of inner light that lets the mind perceive reality. Next, Socrates offers the divided line, a symbolic structure that divides reality into levels. At the lowest level are shadows, reflections, illusions, things that appear real but are not. Above them are physical objects, the world we touch, see, and measure. Higher still are mathematical truths, stable, unchanging, rational. And at the very top are the forms, perfect, eternal realities that everything else imitates. The form of justice, for example, is perfect and unchanging, even if every society struggles to embody it. This leads to the third and most famous image, the allegory of the cave. Socrates asks everyone to imagine prisoners chained inside a dark cave since childhood. All they can see are shadows on the wall, created by objects passing in front of a fire behind them. These shadows become their entire reality. If one prisoner is freed and dragged up toward the light, he will suffer. The brightness will hurt, the journey will be painful, and everything he believed will collapse. But once his eyes adjust to the sun outside, he will see the true world, not shadows, but real forms, real objects, real truth. And if he returns to the cave to free the others, They may mock him or even attack him, preferring familiar shadows to the difficult brightness of truth. Socrates uses this allegory to explain the philosopher's role. The philosopher is the one who breaks free, who sees beyond illusions, beyond public opinion, beyond common beliefs. But with knowledge comes responsibility, a duty to return and help others rise. This is where Plato introduces his boldest idea, the philosopher king. Glaucon is stunned. He cannot imagine philosophers, the quiet thinkers, the seekers of truth, ruling cities. He imagines them as impractical dreamers. But Socrates insists that only those who grasp the good, who see the world clearly, and who rise above personal desire can rule justly. Philosopher kings are not chosen because they want power, but because they are the only ones who truly understand what makes a society flourish. Plato's message is startlingly relevant to our own time. We often see leadership shaped by ambition, wealth, popularity, or charisma. But Plato argues that true leadership must come from wisdom, humility, and the ability to distinguish appearance from reality. A leader who cannot see truth cannot guide others toward it. And this becomes one of the central arguments of the book. Justice requires knowledge. Without wisdom, justice collapses. To cultivate such wisdom, Socrates proposes a long and rigorous system of education. Decades of training in mathematics, geometry, astronomy, philosophy, dialectic, and moral discipline. Only those who remain virtuous through this entire journey can become rulers. Again, Plato's idea is not literal. It is philosophical. He is showing that the path to justice is the path to understanding. After building the ideal city, Socrates now turns to its corruption. Every just structure has within it the seeds of decay. No system, no matter how perfect, can remain stable forever. Socrates describes 5 types of government, each worse than the last. The first is aristocracy, ruled by the best, the ideal state guided by wisdom. But over time, people may start valuing honor more than wisdom, leading to timocracy, a society driven by ambition, military virtue, and the desire for recognition. You can see echoes of this in societies obsessed with status, competition, and victory. Timocracy eventually decays into oligarchy, ruled by the wealthy. Here the city becomes divided between the rich and the poor, and inequality grows. People begin to value wealth above virtue. Fear replaces justice. Greed replaces wisdom. When money becomes the measure of a person, unity dissolves. From oligarchy comes democracy. At first, it appears beautiful, full of freedom, equality, and diversity of lifestyles. But without guidance, freedom becomes chaos. People follow desires without discipline. Every opinion seems equal, even when some are foolish or dangerous. Leaders arise who promise anything, flatter the public, and manipulate emotions. The desire for limitless freedom eats away at order. And from the extremes of democracy emerges tyranny. A charismatic leader claims to protect the people, but gradually seizes power, eliminates opponents, and shapes a regime of fear. This tyrant becomes the most unjust ruler, enslaved by his own uncontrolled desires. What makes this progression extraordinary is not its ancient origin, but how relevant it feels today. Plato is not describing a single city. He is describing the psychology of societies and the psychology of individuals. A person, like a city, can start with wisdom and discipline, but can fall into ambition, greed, confusion, and ultimately enslavement to desire. Socrates uses these political analogies to show how internal disorder in a person reflects outward in society. A just person is ruled by wisdom. A timocratic person is ruled by honor. An oligarchic person is ruled by wealth. A democratic person is ruled by impulses. A tyrannical person is enslaved by cravings, the worst state of all. And this, Socrates says, is why justice is better than injustice. The unjust soul is fragmented, unstable, constantly pulled by conflicting desires. It is noisy inside. It is restless. But the just soul, the soul where reason guides action, spirit supports courage, and desire follows wisdom, is harmonious, peaceful, and strong. Midway through the dialogue, Socrates shifts to a question that feels surprisingly modern. How should we treat stories, art, and culture? He argues that stories shape the soul. What we consume trains our emotions. If we constantly hear tales that reward selfishness or glorify violence, our character subtly bends toward chaos. For this reason, Socrates suggests guiding what stories children hear, not to suppress creativity, but to ensure that their early experiences nourish virtue. This is one of the most debated ideas in the book. But beneath the controversy lies a practical insight. Your mind is shaped by what you repeatedly see and hear. Your habits are formed by the media you consume. Justice begins with attention. What you pour into your soul becomes what your soul pours out. Socrates next turns to the question of equality between men and women in the guardian class. This is one of Plato's most forward-thinking moments. He argues that if men and women possess the same natural qualities for leadership and courage, they should receive the same education and opportunities. The only standard should be ability, not gender. This was radical in ancient Greece, and it remains a reminder that justice requires recognizing equal potential in all. As part 2 moves toward its conclusion, Socrates completes the architecture of the ideal person. The rational part must seek truth. The spirited part must support courage and discipline. The appetitive part must pursue healthy desires, not chaotic ones. Justice is the harmony between these forces. And slowly, Glaucon begins to see what Socrates is building. Justice is not external. It is internal. It is not about rules or rewards. It is about the condition of the soul. A just life is better not because it brings money or fame or approval, but because it brings inner strength, clarity, and peace. At this point in the dialogue, Socrates gently pauses, allowing his listeners and us to absorb the weight of this transformation. He has taken them from the world of shadows to the world of truth, from the confusion of common beliefs to the clarity of philosophical insight. Before we move on, here's a quick reminder from Socrates' journey. If you enjoy our top summaries and storytelling, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this with someone who might need it today. We've got some bonus action items for you at the end, so keep listening. Now, let's get back to the summary. In the final section of the book, Socrates will explore the deepest consequences of justice, the destiny of the soul after death, and the meaning of the philosopher's life. And that journey begins in part 3, the final ascent toward the good, the soul's immortality, and the ultimate answer to why justice is worth pursuing. Socrates has now built the city, explored the soul, described the rise and fall of societies, and shown how justice brings harmony within a person. But Glaucon and Adeimantus are still searching for something deeper, a reason to believe that justice is not only good for this life, but for the soul's long-term destiny. And Plato delivers exactly that. As the conversation enters its final phase, Socrates turns to the question of the philosopher's life. Why would anyone climb out of the cave? Why struggle toward truth when it is so difficult, uncomfortable, and lonely? The answer, Socrates says, is that truth transforms the soul. It gives clarity where there was confusion, stability where there was fear, and purpose where there was aimlessness. The philosopher is not someone who knows everything but someone who sees beyond illusions, someone who lives guided by the good rather than by impulse or public opinion. Socrates argues that the philosopher, who contemplates the highest realities, becomes just almost naturally. When you train your mind to look at what is eternal instead of what is temporary, your desires quiet down. You stop chasing petty rewards. You stop being controlled by what other people think. You begin to act for the sake of what is right, not for the sake of praise or fear. This is why justice is superior to injustice. The unjust person lives without internal order, pulled in different directions by fear, greed, lust, envy, and ego. The unjust soul is its own punishment. It is never satisfied, never calm, always hungry for more and terrified of loss. But the just soul, ruled by wisdom, is free. It knows itself. It is not enslaved to desire. It is capable of true happiness. Socrates then addresses one of the most controversial proposals of the book: communal life and shared families for the guardian class. The guardians, he argues, should not be distracted by personal wealth, private interests, or family loyalties. Their devotion must be to the city as a whole. Every guardian should see every child as their own and every citizen as their family. This idea, though radical, is meant to show the purity required for perfect justice, where leaders serve the common good without private ambitions. As the dialogue continues, Socrates introduces a powerful concept: the noble lie. This is not a deception meant to manipulate, but a myth designed to inspire unity and purpose. Every citizen is told that their soul contains a particular metal, gold, silver, or bronze, representing their natural abilities. This myth encourages each person to accept the role they are best suited for. Justice, after all, is each part doing what it is naturally capable of doing. While modern readers debate this idea, Plato's deeper message is that society functions best when people embrace the responsibilities they are genuinely equipped to fulfill, rather than chasing roles that do not align with their nature. Socrates then returns to the structure of the soul and shows how each type of person mirrors each type of political system. The democratic person, ruled by impulses, pursues every desire that appears. Today, this resembles our world of constant distraction, jumping from one pleasure to another, confusing freedom with indulgence. The oligarchic person, focused on wealth, lives cautiously and anxiously, afraid to lose money. The timocratic person, driven by honor, lives competitively and aggressively. The tyrannical person lives in constant torment, dominated by extreme desires, the worst and most enslaved state. This leads to one of Plato's strongest assertions: the tyrannical person is the most miserable of all, even if they appear powerful. The just person, even if poor or unnoticed, is happier than any tyrant because they live in harmony with themselves. Happiness, Socrates says, is a function of inner order, not outer appearance. A disturbed soul, no matter how wealthy, cannot experience true peace. Toward the end of the book, Socrates examines pleasure itself. He argues that not all pleasures are equal. The pleasures of the mind and the philosopher, the pleasure of understanding, truth, harmony, and self-control, are higher and more lasting than the pleasures of the body or the ego. The philosopher can judge all types of pleasure because they have experienced them from the highest vantage point. So when they say that the life of wisdom is best, they speak from knowledge, not assumption. This idea is deeply practical for modern life. The pleasures of distraction, consumption, or status fade quickly and leave us wanting more. But the pleasure of clarity, virtue, and self-mastery grows with time. Plato invites us to examine which pleasures truly nourish our soul and which ones drain it. Now, as Socrates prepares to close the dialogue, he turns to the myth of a story meant to bring everything together. A warrior killed in battle, returns to life to describe what he saw in the afterlife. Souls are judged for their actions. The just are rewarded, the unjust punished. After 1,000 years, each soul chooses its next life, a life of power, poverty, nobility, tyranny, or simplicity. The most important lesson of the myth is this: the soul chooses its destiny. A soul trained in justice and wisdom chooses a life that is moderate, balanced, and good. But a soul corrupted by desire chooses lives that lead to suffering. Even the soul of a former tyrant, overwhelmed by fear and confusion, often chooses another miserable life because it cannot see clearly. The myth is not meant to be literal. It is Plato's symbolic way of showing that our choices shape our character, and our character shapes our future. Justice strengthens the soul so that it can make wise choices. Injustice weakens the soul and blinds it. Socrates ends with a powerful message for Glaucon and Adeimantus, and for us. Justice is not a burden. It is the health of the soul. The just person lives in harmony, the unjust person in conflict. And just as a healthy body feels light and strong, a healthy soul feels peaceful and capable of joy. So what does all of this mean for our lives today? It means that justice begins within. You don't control the entire society, but you do control the ordering of your own soul. When your desires follow wisdom, when your courage supports your values, and when your reason leads with clarity, you become powerful in the truest sense, not because you dominate others, but because you govern yourself. Plato leaves us with a reminder that every choice shapes us. Every habit builds or distorts the soul. Justice is not a rule. It is a way of living. It is waking up each day with purpose, making decisions that align with truth, and choosing harmony over chaos. And even when the world around you seems unjust, you can still cultivate justice within. Now, as we reach the end of this audiobook, let's gather a final handful of practical steps inspired by Plato's message, steps you can begin today to cultivate a more just, peaceful, and empowered life. Start by observing your inner paths, your reasoning, your emotions, and your desires. Notice which one is leading you. Try to let reason guide you, just as the guardians guide the city. Practice moderation in desires, not by repressing them, but by not letting them control you. Train your spirit, your inner courage, to support your values rather than your impulses. Seek wisdom in everything, from conversations to books to self-reflection. Examine what stories, media, and influences you allow into your mind. Ask whether they lead you toward harmony or confusion. Reflect on your habits. They shape the soul in small, unnoticed ways. And finally, pursue truth, even when it is uncomfortable, because truth is the sun that illuminates your entire life. This is the heart of the Republic, a journey from the shadows of confusion to the clarity of justice, a journey from disorder to harmony, from impulse to wisdom, from appearance to reality. That's all for today. We'll continue bringing you top book summaries that inspire change and reflection. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep transforming. Transform your thoughts, transform your life.